Hello, everybody, and happy Monday. I hope you're having a wonderful Monday and that you had a good weekend because weekends are the time that prepare us for Manic Mondays. So, I am Terry True Crime, and welcome to Midday Missing, where we highlight current missing person cases that need more attention. Now, Midday Missing is part of TCWT Media, and like I said, we are dedicated to raising awareness for missing person cases every Monday and Wednesday at noon Central. Now, today, guys, we are profoundly honored to welcome Heather Shtuka, the resilient mother of Ryan, who went missing in Canada. Heather's unwavering love and determination in the face of heartache. I mean, it has inspired me, and I think it inspires everyone who hears the story. And her story is a powerful reminder of the strength found even in the darkest moments. So, in today's episode, we're going to listen to Heather as she shares her experience, her hopes for finding answers, and the ongoing fight to bring Ryan home. Heather, thank you so much for joining us and allowing us to share Ryan's story and the journey to find him.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I mean, talking to you on the phone beforehand, I have told so many people the last couple of days about the story and just how inspiring you are in everything that y'all have done for your son. I mean, I can't imagine what I would do, and I really hope I would be like you.
That's very kind. Thank you.
So, I know we talked about describing Brian and we talked about it's just a bunch of adjectives and things. So I thought maybe it'd be better if you could share some memorable moments or characteristics about Ryan to help us learn more about him because I love the fact that he teased his siblings. Just going to tell you, I found that amazing.
And it wasn't just siblings. He had that. My husband's Scott is a huge person who teases. My dad is, and so I think Ryan came by it very naturally.
Ah,
I think what happened is that the student became the master after a while, and he was very good at it. Just very a good kid. And like we had talked about using all these adjectives to describe your child, or just they could be described to anybody.
right.
I remember he used to do it all the time to the girls. He would used to tease them all the time if they were about to watch something that they really wanted to watch on TV. Suddenly the TV would turn off, and then he can't find the remote, that sort of thing. And just the sheer panic in little girls, like, what? Like, this is the show I've been waiting for all week. And he's like, oh, I just don't know where it is. And then suddenly after, very some intense moments, they'd find it. They'd be almost in tears. And then I don't think he'd quite recognize that it was going to get that far. He just thought it was funny. Right. And then he'd feel bad. And he's like, this show is stupid, but I mean, I guess I'll watch it with you, that sort of thing, right? So
Oh,
you'd be like, they're not even sure what's happened. Have they, they've been tortured, but now they've, had this great reward at the end. He was kind of like that. Or with my mom, he teased her, I remember when he was like 7 or 8, we were in Walt Disney World, and we shared 2 rooms, and he was sharing it with my mom and dad. And so he was in the one room with my mom, and she's like, it was so cold, Ryan, you stole all the blankets. He goes, can't you just use your, pull up your wrinkles and use them or something like that? And you would think that would be awful. Like, anybody looking at that, I'd be like, oh, I can't believe that.
no, why?
Like your grandmother, I
Oh,
can't. But he'd have this little like side smirk, and he'd say it to her with such, and she'd be like, looking at him, and then she'd start laughing because she knew he's not being malicious, he's certainly not being rude. He would pick and choose who he would do that with, so it
right.
was only within the family unit. He was not that kind that would take it out on the road.
Oh, but I love that because I'm the one who woulda came back with the sassy comment. Well, you're right, and I'm gonna use my wrinkles, and I'm gonna take all those blankets, and you can deal with it.
I think that's probably what she did. Yeah.
So, can you tell us first, I wanna know, How did you hear about Ryan going missing?
We had been, so where we are, it's 9.5 hours from where Ryan was. And so we had been all day at this ringette. So it's, if you're not familiar, most people aren't in the US, but it is a game primarily played by women. And instead of a hockey stick, they have just a stick with no end on it, and they play with rings rather than pucks. It's very
Oh,
competitive. It's a very fast-paced game. And so both of our daughters played. Our oldest daughter was very competitive in this. And so they were having at tournaments all day. And we had been back and forth. It was, if you've ever been a parent in any kind of sport where you're having to go to a tournament all weekend,
yes.
it's not close enough to be like an easy commute. And
Right.
the times are so different. So we were back and forth. And I remember finally arriving home about 9 o'clock at night. And I was sort of catching up on one of my friends whose daughter played, but she wasn't able to attend. So I was kind of going back and forth texting with her, probably complaining about how the girls played. I don't know what it is. But I had this text that came through on my phone that was from James. And it came across as Jimmy James because that's what my husband had nicknamed him at a young age. And so I got this text and I didn't even really look at it. It wasn't something that I thought, it didn't trigger a concern. It was
Right.
just like, I wonder what he's going to show me about what him and Ryan were up to because they were together up in Sun Peaks. And so I waited a couple of minutes and then opened up the text. And as I'm reading it, the text basically said, "Hey, Heather, Ryan didn't come home last night and didn't show up to work today. We've called the RCMP, which is our local law enforcement, the Royal
Mhm.
Mounted Canadian Police." And so he's like, "You should be hearing from them." And I just thought, like, odd.
Yeah.
I'm reading it, but I can't. It's registering it, but I think I'm reading it too fast for my brain to fully comprehend. And at the same time, I recognize that this is an important text, and I'm trying to also tell Scott, and he does not get anything of what I'm saying. And he's like, "What? Can you, like, what is that? Tell me again." And I'm like, "I can't. I physically cannot tell you again. I don't think these words will ever come out of my mouth again in the same way." So I had to show him the phone. And you know, I had said my husband is like the anchor in our family. I think I'm the spine. I think he's the anchor, although those are mixed
Oh.
metaphors. But he's got broad shoulders, and it feels like he holds up the weight of the world, especially holds all of our family on those shoulders as broadly as he can. And I just remember in that moment when he read that text, I just saw this shell, like this, it was almost like the exhaling of breath, and it's almost like he crumbled. He didn't, and and I have said, there's lots of things in life when you've been married. This will be our 30th year. We're going into our 30th wedding anniversary, and there's lots of things throughout a marriage that you will have done that is either unintentionally or intentionally mean to the person that you're with. And
Mhm.
there's lots of words that you can't take back. And I think that in that moment, those words hurt my husband than probably more than anything else that had been said in our marriage
I'm
thus far.
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna just have to say, I also think as a mom, those are not words that we ever think we're going to read. So how could I mean, my brain would instantly say, "Nope, not nope, blocking that out." And it's something I just think it wouldn't process for me. So I totally can understand that. And I'm sure you go into shock immediately.
I did. I didn't process it. I had one daughter was coming up the stairs, one daughter was coming down the stairs, and they're taking it all in. And Scott calls the police. I'm just sitting there. I finished talking to James. I called him to see if I could get a better sense, and there really wasn't. I couldn't understand it. No more information was really given besides what was offered in the text. And Scott's like, we're leaving. We're gonna drive throughout the night to go to Sun Peaks. And he hung up the phone and then went into the garage and was sort of getting things. And I just stood there and I'm like, okay, well, we're leaving. What do I need? What do you pack for this? What, I don't know. How long do you think I'll be gone? Like, how long will this take? And it was just like, I was in a constant thing. And in that moment, my 17-year-old daughter, Jordan, went upstairs. She got a bag. She started packing stuff in. My other one, Juliana, she's hanging on to our dog, Oscar. And, if any dog could absorb everything in this world, that dog was taking it that particular night. And she's just sitting there. She was 12 at the time, or almost 12. And, Jordan's packing, Juliana's lying on the bed, and you could feel it. And I think in that moment, it was like, whew, okay, if Scott's the anchor, I'm the spine. I'm the backbone in this family, and I need to pull myself up from wherever it's going to be. And I lied to them. I'm like, you know what? I'm sure he's just with another girl. He's found somebody. He just didn't come home. And we all knew it was a lie. But I think in that moment, you were willing to accept whatever lie can be, just to put off on the truth. And from that moment, it was like, okay, you know what? It's going to be fine. Thank you so much for packing. Grammy's going to be over here shortly. It's going to be fine. We're going to be back. And boy, your brother's going to be in so much trouble when we get up there, that sort of thing. And it was shock. I think we've operated on shock for the first 3 or 4 days.
I mean, and I don't know if I would have called it a lie. I would have think that maybe very wishful, that hoping, because you don't want to accept reality. So I don't know if I call that a lie or is just a coping mechanism to be able to get through. Now, do you remember the last time you talked to Ryan?
Yes, actually, it was the 14th. It was Valentine's Day. And, he didn't talk to us. He texted. Scott and him talked. Scott and him texted. If I wanted to get a hold of him, he was almost 21. So is he texting his mother unless he needs something? No.
No.
And, you text him and he'll respond, but, it would take some time. The only way I could actually get an immediate response is if I DM'd him on Instagram and sent him something to do with dogs, and then immediately he'd be back. And I'm like, why are you up so early? Like it's 9:30 here, but it means it's 8:30 your time with the time change. Like, why? He's like, well, I don't want to get in the habit of sleeping in. And he would get it, but only respond to like something funny. Otherwise, he's not interested in it. But this particular time, it was Valentine's Day, and for some reason we got him on the phone, and every single one of us, even the girls, had a chance to talk to him on Valentine's Day, and that was unusual. And so, happy Valentine's Day, love bug. What are you doing? What's been going on? And he had that conversation. Then the girls came on, and what 20-year-old really wants to talk to his, 11-year-old sister, but he was game for it. They had that ability to have that one last conversation. And for that, I'll always be grateful, because you never know when that last moment's going to be.
That just, yeah. So tell us how Ryan wound up at Sun Peaks working at a ski resort, because I love the support that you were telling me and about what you did, because I think so many parents struggle with that.
Yeah, it was his 20th birthday. I was working, and normally we always do something for his birthday. I since the kids were little, I used to always take them out for lunch. And so this particular time, I was not going to be home for supper. I was working my shift, and so I took him out for lunch. Got him his, I think his St. Patrick's Day shooter shot, and green beer. And so he was sitting there. I'm like, okay, so tell me what's going on. So what are your plans? Just trying to have an adult conversation with children is not necessarily easy. It's that fine line of trying to decide if you're asking to criticize or you're asking because that's what grown-ups do when they talk to one another. And I think we were just
What's the agenda?
Right.
is what
Yeah.
you say. What's the
Yeah, like,
agenda
why are
here?
you asking these questions? And so it was like, this is what normal people actually do when they're out together. Adults usually talk to one another. So Ryan had graduated when he was 18. He had done really well at school. He was, I, I always say, he was, I don't want to say lazy, but things came easy to him. So at school, he would put in I don't want to say bare minimum, but I feel like it was the bare minimum. I think he just did whatever he had, and yet he was rewarded with high marks. And I always worried that he would struggle. And I said, my fear is, Ryan, that you will go through life thinking that things will be easy because
Mhm.
they come to you easily. And that's not true. And if you don't have the work ethic or the ethic behind it to put in the hard work, you're going to find life is going to be not as easy as you thought it was going to be. It's going to be a lot harder. So he was like, yeah. And I don't know if it went in one ear without the other, as do all lessons, right?
Right.
So he had taken a year off. He didn't know what he wanted to do. And so he went to work with the company that my husband worked for. He was going to do labor, did construction, was making good money, and did well at it. And I thought, okay, well, this will give you an idea of whether you want to work out in a trade, or if that's not your thing, maybe that will help define or
Yeah.
refine your search, and you'll look at something in school. So he did a year of that, and then he said, yeah, I'm gonna go to school. So he went to school, and he was majoring in science, and then he did really well in his first year. And then at that time, he's like, I don't, I don't want to keep spending money that we have for school if I don't know what I'm going to do afterwards. I don't like, do I get a science degree, and what am I going to do with that after? What interests me? I'm like, okay, um, fairly mature decision.
Yeah.
And then that particular time, so we were out for his birthday lunch, and I'm like, so what do you think you want to do next? And he's like, and he had this sort of look on his face, like he was hesitant. And he said, I was thinking about spending a season in this winter at a ski resort. And he had that sort of hesitancy, like he was waiting. It was
Mhm.
expectant. Like, what is she going to say?
Right.
Um, and I mean, I could have said a lot of things. I could have said, like, you're not a professional snowboarder. So, like, what do you
Right.
think you're going to do? Is this a career that you're going into? Like, is this what you're going to do? Why would you go from $23 an hour to $11.47? That makes,
Yeah.
like, I could have done and said all of those things. A lot of them may have made sense logically, but the look in his face was kind of like, and it wasn't like he was asking for permission, because he didn't need that. He was old enough
Right.
not to have to ask for something
He
like that.
wanted your blessing, wanted
Right.
your
Yes. And so I just looked at him, and he had that sort of expectant look on his face, like he was hesitant. And in that moment, it is probably the one of the proudest moments as a parent. I said, tell me more. Sounds exciting. Tell me more. And I will forever be grateful that I said that, because I mean, I know I could have said it, and he might probably would have gone anyways, but to see that light in his eyes shine, even though it cost us everything for him
yeah.
to go, it cost me everything. I'm so glad that I did it, because that light just Sean, and he was excited. And he's like, well, I was thinking about doing this. I'm going to go with James, his friend that he's known since high school. We're going to go, we're going to do this. Okay, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? And so he just sort of explained that he wanted to spend a season. And he finally narrowed it down between two. And then he ended up getting offered a position, same with James, at Sun Peak Ski Resort in British Columbia, right outside Kamloops. And that's where he was getting ready to go, and he left December 1st, 2017.
I mean, I think as parents, it is so hard because, we've got to quickly decide what our words are, and we've got to be careful to choose them. And I agree. My first response would have been like, what?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's why I said you just amaze me because I would hope I would have said that, but I could just see me going, "What? Have you lost your mind?" But like you said, the light in his eyes in seeing you do that as a mom, that is the best thing to see as a parent, with our children when they get older.
Yeah, I think
So,
our job isn't to diminish their dreams. I
yeah.
mean, I think there's times where we have to infuse a sense of reality in there,
Right.
or what's logical. But I don't think it is within our bandwidth to deny children the opportunity to explore life on their own.
Yeah, I mean, and he sounded so responsible, so he wasn't asking you to pay his way to go do this. He was going to go work, own his own, so, I mean, I think that also says so much in how responsible he
And I
was.
appreciated that, considering we had saved money for his education, and for him
Mhm.
not to go through and do the remaining 3 years, because he didn't want to just spend money, even though it was ours, which is,
Right.
but
That's
make no amends, he spent it in other ways, I'm sure. It was just not this particular one.
right. Now, had Ryan ever done a disappearing act, gone missing? I mean, as responsible as he was, I can't imagine that he had, but was that something he had ever done before?
No, you know what? We've been blessed. All three of our kids really have caused no cause for concern. They've always been really well-rounded, respectful individuals. We never had to worry about the high school times where you worried that they weren't going to be home, or that they wouldn't follow the curfew. Not that we really had much. There was a lot of
Right.
that respect that came back and forth, and
Oh,
so we we didn't have to worry about that. So he'd never, like in high school, if he was going out, we knew where he was, probably because we drove him. He didn't get his license until he was 18 and a half. Um, and his friends would, but they were all such a responsible group. I was so surprised. They'd always set up something. So if they needed, to get a drive somewhere to get picked up, they'd always have somebody, one of the parents would be driving, one of the parents would be picking up. So he
nice.
always came home. We never had problems. We never had to wonder where he was. He was always accessible. He had no problem telling us where he was. We didn't feel like he lied to us. We knew all of his friends. I think we were a safe place for a lot of people to be able to come and go. And so no, we never had an experience where we had to worry about where he was or if he had gone missing.
Every other parent, including myself, is going, wow, if you have all three that way, because I had one that way, one not so much. I'm like, oh, can't imagine all
I think it
three
was
being that way.
fearful though. Like I think my kids, that was probably one of the things that I now I sit there and regret. I think I'll be an excellent grandparent when that time comes. But I think my kids definitely knew that there's a certain level that you can do, and I will allow a lot of leeway until I
Mhm.
get to the point. I had a friend that used to talk about a volcano. She's like, "Do you want me to have my volcano? Do you want it to erupt? Because we have no idea when that's going to go back in." And I
Right.
used to count to my kids all the time, like that's one, that's two. And then I'd sit there and I'd lower my voice and close the eye and put up the finger and be like, "Do you really want to get me to three?" And they'd be like, "No." And even at Ryan at 20, I could still stop him in his tracks by saying, "Ryan, do you really want to get me to three?" And he'd be like, "No, ma'am." Like, fair enough.
See,
Right.
fair enough. Because I tell even with my grandkids, I'm like, "Do you want me to cloud up and rain on you?" And they're like, "What does that mean?" I'm like, "We don't know. My grandmother, I never found out because I didn't want to. Do you
Right.
really wanna be the one who finds out?"
They're like, "Nope, nope."
Nope.
Yeah.
Now, was there any changes in Ryan's behavior or routine up until you got that text from James?
Not well, I mean, this would have been a new experience. So I guess maybe
Right.
that's not fair for me to say that. Absolutely not, because I think everything in that 2.5 months that he was there was new and different for him. But no, he was the same personality. He hung out with the same people, same friends. And then when he went up there, he hung out with James and his roommates. He got to know some of the people that were living there, obviously. But he still was that type that he brought his Game Boy or PlayStation up. I can't remember which one it was. Probably saying it wrong.
That's
Um,
okay. I don't ask me.
like,
Some I
he
call
had
my I'm like, "Those
something.
gaming things."
He had one of those things, and he had taken up there. So if he didn't go out with his roommates or friends, that's what he could be seen doing, sitting at home playing on Xbox. And then, it was interesting because when Scott and him would talk, Scott would call him or text him, and he told Scott that he had been snowboarding 36 days straight. And he was so happy with that, have the opportunity to go up, because he would ski every single or snowboard every single morning before heading to work. And then he'd have 2 days off. In those 2 days, he would go out and snowboard during those days.
Wow. I mean, just the experience he was getting is, yeah. Now, tell me about how the authorities reacted when you got there and what they in the community did for helping.
So we drove up as soon as we got the notification. It was probably about 9:30 our time, or 10:30. We left and we arrived about 6 o'clock in the morning. And during that time, when we were talking to the police, they had said they had sent out their canine unit. So it was really dark by the time they got the notification. And then when they came up, they certainly did the door to door that they went to. They went to the house that he was last seen at. They talked to the roommates. They conducted the things that they're going to do door to door, sort of that first initial search. But the
Mhm.
canine unit came up with the dogs, and so they were searching, I believe, until probably about 2 o'clock at night. And then they went home, and then they were coming back the next day. During that period of time, Kamloops Search and Rescue would have been notified. They mobilized their volunteer and their units that evening. They set up a plan. They were getting ready, their command center, getting everything ready, but they weren't going to come up until first light, which makes sense. There's
Makes
no
sense.
searching that can be done at that particular time, and it was still snowing and it was quite cold. So they did all their preparation beforehand, and then we're ready to go first thing in the morning. So when we arrived there, we went to the house, we talked to the roommates, didn't really get a better sense, but at least now I could visualize where he was, um, where he was supposed to have ended up, what it looked like, because we weren't really familiar with it. We had
Mhm.
only been there once, but it was a different thing. We were up there skiing and obviously didn't really take in the whole town or the village. So we just sort of got a sense of that. We went to the command center that they had set up. It was a ski patrol. They had turned into a temporary command center. And we went in there and we met with the Kamloops Search and Rescue. So I'll say KSAR. We met with their two managers. And the one had said to us, based on what we've heard, so based on the fact that Ryan had been drinking the night before, based on the levels that it's possible he consumed, the temperature, because it was minus 26 out,
Oh,
it was
wow.
freezing, and had been since that whole weekend. It was one of the coldest. Um, so based on that and the length of time that he had been out in the elements, they told us the chance of finding Ryan alive would be slim to none. And I think we appreciated the candor, as shocking as that may have seemed, because at least you could prepare for it. And so
Right.
that's what we ended up doing, is sitting in the command center all day. I couldn't search. I had just ruptured my Achilles tendon a couple months before. And so it
Oh.
was just finally weight bearing. And so I couldn't go out. I know that Scott wanted to,
Mhm.
but I think in that moment he was like, I'm going to stay with you, because there's no point in leaving me by myself.
Right.
So we sat there all day, and they went out and they had a huge amount of volunteers that come up, along with the RCMP, along with KSAR. They were all up there searching. And finally we went back to our hotel room probably about 6 o'clock. It was dark out. Our friends who we had told not to show up drove throughout the day, and were there probably about 6:15. There was about five of them, and they're angels. If you could have ever imagined angels on earth, those five people will forever be in my heart and forever be solidified as angels.
Absolutely. When you told me that, I mean, people say ride or die, but that's some great friends.
Oh, amazing. And to be honest, they were the beginning of more amazing people. But that was our first indication that things were going to be a little bit different. And I remember the RCMP liaison, like their officer came, as well as one of the KSAR managers came, and they said, well, we haven't found him. And they said, based we've done all the tasks that have been set out by the RCMP. So this whole search day, we've done all the tasks that have been given to us, and until there's a change in environment, which means the snow melts,
Mhm.
and then you can find him in the snow, or if there's a change of location. So someone says, well, I saw Ryan
Right.
here. Then we won't be coming back. And I just remember going, okay, so I'll see you tomorrow. Like, I didn't know, like, who knows
Right.
about missing people? Like, I never heard about anybody that I knew that had somebody that had gone missing. And so you have no idea what
Yeah.
that means, right? So I just thought, you
I
might
would have
not
been the
have
same way.
everybody. It's not
See
going
you
to
tomorrow.
look the same way, but there'll be somebody here.
Right.
And it was a shock to actually walk into the command center and realize it had been turned back into a ski patrol, and that there was nobody there searching. There was just our 5 angels that went out and rented whatever they needed because they didn't come with that stuff. And Scott and them spent the rest of the day searching. And then we set up our own command centers. And from that point on, we engaged the community. The community of Sun Peaks has been amazing, as well as in around the Kamloops area. As of course, our hometown, you sort of expect Beaumont to be as involved and engaged, and they certainly were. But at the time, we had the community of Sun Peaks and Kamloops came together, and we set up a command center. And over the 4.5 months that we stayed up there, because we weren't going to go home, we had the RCMP officer said, on your way out of town tomorrow or the next day, just stop in at the detachment and we'll tell you what happens next. And Scott and I are just looking at each other going, but you haven't found him. So
Right.
like, who goes home? Like, I couldn't imagine. And then for us, knowing that we're waiting. So we're waiting for the snow melts so somebody will trip over our son like he was garbage. Like
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine. He matters. Like, I couldn't even
Yeah.
imagine
I
doing that. So
yeah.
we're not leaving. We didn't know how long that would be. I don't know if we ever thought we would be there as long as we were. But we thought we're not giving up. It's the last physical thing we could do for him. We're not giving
Right.
up. And so we didn't. We started that. And over that time that we actually stayed there until the snow melted, we had I would say over 1,100 people came up to search. We had 2 buses that came from Alberta, our province. So they travel 12 hours to come to search for one day and then go back. So we had 2 buses. And then we had a group that fundraised to charter an aircraft to bring up a whole group of volunteers. And they had a waiting list of people that wanted to come up and wanted to help. And I think that changes you in your humanity as well,
Oh,
because I
yeah.
always wonder what kind of person I would have been prior to this. Would I have been one of those people that would have signed up to be on a bus for somebody that I didn't know,
Right.
but knew that they needed help? And I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I know that I would be that person now, but at the time,
Okay.
and for these people to come up and give of themselves, to come up
Yeah.
and help another family, is just awe-inspiring. And that was the beginning, I think, of everything. Having the community stand behind you, having so many people come up and search, and be part of that. And that's what we did. We did the search. We did have search and rescue come out a couple of other times, but um, as grateful as I am for that, I also recognize that you were also now at this point looking for a body the same we are.
Right.
And so I don't know if you had the same expertise. Well, you obviously had more expertise, but um, it at that point it's just all a chance for all of
Right.
us,
It
right?
is. It is. Now, have any of Ryan's belongings that he had on him that night, has anything been found since he went
Nothing.
missing?
I mean, if we had been able to find something, I think that would have been able to help pinpoint at least what direction he would have gone in if he had left on his own accord. I mean, there's obviously quite a few theories, but we've not been able to find anything.
Now, let's go back to the night he went missing. They went out with friends. They went back to a house where they knew people to hang out and had a gathering and got together. Tell us how he went missing from there.
And I mean, I think that's where the struggle comes from, because you are, sorry, you are looking at lots of people that had been out. It's late at night. You're
Mhm.
now asking people who have been drinking and or doing other things to remember a significant moment that didn't pose a significant timeline for
Right.
them at the time, right? And so you're always going to have, and that's where our struggles were, because nobody can quite remember. All we know is that Ryan had gone to a bar up at the village with his friends, was walking home, and they decided that they were going to. Some of the people in the group left to go back to their staff accommodation. Some of them went back to the house, the roommate house. That's where Ryan was living,
Mhm.
and then some of them carried on, including Ryan and some of his roommates, to one of the houses that were on the street, Burfield Drive, and they were there. And I don't know if they were there that long. It doesn't feel like, by all accounts, because I think they stayed until the end of the bar when it closed at 1,
Okay.
and then walking home and then get to this place, which was maybe 15 minutes later, because they got a drive down there,
Right.
maybe. And so James left first,
Mhm.
and said, I'm heading home, and then left. And then at some point, his other two roommates, Chris and Kristen, said, along with another fellow, we're going to leave. And so they thought it looked like Ryan was standing up to put on his coat. Although I don't know if any words were ever expressed, like, hey, I'm coming home. Hey, wait up for me.
Right.
Anything like that. They just assumed. And then they walked out the door. And on this particular in Burfield, the drive, there's no street lights. Some houses will have the security lights on, so as you pass by, the lights will
Okay.
come on. But otherwise, the street is fairly dark. We've got houses in there at the time that there was construction going on. There was also houses that were duplexes, and we didn't know until probably 3 or 4 days after doing door-to-door knocking on it that a lot of those places had um, basement suites, whether they're authorized or unauthorized. They had basement suites, and so we didn't recognize that a lot of those places were fourplexes, not um,
Right.
duplexes, right? And so many cars on that. The snow at that point was between 18 to 14 feet high on the berms on the sides. So it's just really hard to see down that street.
Yeah.
So they're walking in between cars, in between the snow. It's dark, snow starting to fall. It's freezing out. And I think at some point they looked behind and didn't see him and thought, okay, well, maybe he decided to stay. Maybe he went another way. But he'll catch up with us. And so they just continued carrying on. And I know people always struggle with that, but I look at it and go, James left, and nobody, not that nobody cared, but nobody
Right.
stopped him, or nobody felt the need to walk
It was safe.
year old
You
home, right?
Yeah.
That's how people get around in this particular ski resort, because they come from overseas, they don't have cars.
Right. I would
So,
have not thought anything strange of it
yep.
either.
And he was 21. I'd have a different opinion, I suppose, if I dropped my kids off, they were 13, on a country road to go and attend a bush party. I would expect that we would all stay together. But I don't expect a near 21-year-old
Yeah.
wait for me. You can't go home unless I go
Right.
home. That sort of thing. So I've never held any sort of anger that you didn't stay with them, because had James not made it home, but then Ryan had, I think this entire narrative would have been how awful Ryan would have been. Like,
Right.
why didn't you go home with him when he went home?
It
Right?
just
It's
it
just
ha
chance.
it just yeah, it just
Yeah.
chance.
Yeah. And so that we just knew that at some point his friends, they went home, and then nobody can remember if Ryan left in that house. Nobody can remember if he left, what time he left, what did that look like, right? Like, we just don't. And there's been contrary stories about whether, oh, he looked fine, he looked like he had too much to drink, he looked like he was completely normal, he looked like he could barely stand. And
Right.
really, I don't know what that is the truth somewhere in the middle? Is it one extreme or
Everybody's perception is
yeah,
so different when it
yeah,
comes to that. I mean, I think of going over to friends' house. We had friends over Saturday night. I couldn't tell you what time one of our neighbors left. I know he left. I know he said goodbye. But now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, I couldn't tell you what time he left.
and what his state was. I mean,
Yeah, and
like,
he
you're
walked
asking
home.
people that are drinking
Yeah,
to tell you what another person's
yeah,
drunken state was. I don't know how accurate you could be.
yeah. Now, what kind of impact has this disappearance had on you and the girls and your family?
Well, I mean, I guess it goes without saying it's changed everything about us. Like it's this ambiguous loss for us that we can't quite. It feels like Groundhog Day every single
Yeah.
day. We had an 11-year-old that was in grade 7 at the time, and she came up and spent most of the time that we were up there with us. We had a 17-year-old that was graduating from high school. Her boyfriend, who lived with us at the time, was they were both in high level competitive sports and going into PL. So all of those things happened, and they just couldn't leave high school. They just
Right.
couldn't leave. And so for them to have to navigate at home without us, it changes them. I look at both of them, and they're amazing young women who have so much confidence and have done so much. And I am so surprised by that, because I think it could have changed them. And
Oh,
you probably will see some residual
right.
trauma that has happened that doesn't come out like normally. It doesn't feel as mainstream. And I don't know if
Right.
that's just the way we've sort of brought them along. But I think the one thing about Ryan going missing is that we had to talk about him every single day. So we did. I mean, we talked about him with volunteers. We talked about the stories. And so it was never a taboo. So we've talked
Right.
about him being wonderful. We've talked about him being a jerk. And every moment in between, he was imperfectly perfect. And so he's not on that pedestal where like he was a messiah. He was
Right.
normal, average, ordinary, beautiful, loving. And so we still talk about him. Although our family, again, I think there's a reason where Ryan got his sarcasm from. So we probably deal with it a little bit more of a dark
Hmm.
humor than most people do. But the girls, I think, are 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 doing well. They're coping well, and um, when they feel like they need extra support, they actually actively go out and search for that. So I'm
Oh,
happy with them for that. I think that Scott and I, um, we grew a lot closer. I think we were able to see each other in a different life than we ever. I mean, we've been together for 30 years. So, I met Scott when he was, well, I don't want to say he's 20, but he was 20 at the time. So that kind of gives you the age that we're at. I was 12.
you were 12. I was to say you were 12. That's okay.
So super young. No, but so I've known Scott since he was 20, and I think that as you grow into this relationship, I think I've had struggled not to see him as this 20-year-old in some ways, like growing up, but looking like an overgrown boy in a big man
Right.
suit, right? And I think that when you see something like this tragedy happening and seeing Scott every single day getting up, putting on his snow outfits, going out, doesn't matter what the weather was, and searching all day long. And um, and the confidence in what he was doing and how he was directing and how he was searching, I was like, this is my partner. This is the person that I'm with. And so I think we were able to see each other in a different light. We were able to grow closer. I think, personally, for me, there was a lot of changes. I went back to school and graduated with a degree in public relations. We
Nice.
co-founded a nonprofit with another family that it's called the Freebird Project, that helps support and provide resources to families that are going through similar situations, because Ryan is not the first and he will not be the last, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of trauma that happens when a child goes missing or a loved
Mhm.
one goes missing that most people wouldn't know. And we help navigate them or act as a sounding board, I think, if they have questions, because it can be very overwhelming. There's a sense of desperation that people prey upon, right?
Yeah, I mean,
So
I think it's amazing because so many families we talk to, they don't make it through this together. It breaks the family, and I think it says a lot that y'all used it to come even closer
yeah, and
and that it didn't destroy you because that doesn't happen a lot.
no, it does absolutely does not. But I think, and it's because I think people grieve differently, and maybe one of the silver linings is that because we were so far away from home and we were there, all of our friends came and stayed with us. So we had a house that could fit, I think, almost 16 people in it, and at some points that house was completely and utterly full. And so we just have people come up and spend weeks at a time with us, and that we're searching every single day. And so, that Scott, being the one that fixes things, going out and searching every single day, struggled with the anger and, I've been searching and I can't find him, so therefore somebody must be responsible. And he'd go
Right.
through that ebb and flow. And I might not be at the same point. I might be at that when he's flowing, I'm ebbing. Now I'm
Right.
thinking, he's wandered away. And just, has succumbed to hypothermia or something like that. And so that's hard when I'm ebbing and he's flowing, to have those conversations, because automatically you want to defend your position. We never really had to do that, because, he would talk about where he was at that moment with his friends and they would support him. And I would talk about where I was with my friends and they would support me. And then when we came together, we were actually able to talk about Ryan and how much love we had, and what we were doing in the search to get them. That we'd already explored those theories and we didn't
Right.
need to do them with each other.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, I know we talked a little bit because Ryan's case is so unique in the fact there's not a theory like that he was taken or that this, and I'm sure you've gone back and forth. Where are you today and what you think happened to him?
I think we still ebb and flow.
Do you?
I think one of the best advice that I ever received was in the first couple of days we went and had, I was struggling because, so many conflicting things were coming in at the time. So somebody would tell the police one thing, and then we would hear from search and rescue that they said something else to them. And you just felt like at that point, you're like, who's lying? Why would anybody be lying? And maybe that's not necessarily true, but at the time you just felt like, and I was, we've been putting this out and we've been searching and somebody knows something. And I was just like, what happened? And I can't imagine. I can't go through the next step because I don't know what Ryan's last moments were. And so that's really keeping me from doing anything else. I feel like I want to crawl into that fetal position, except that there's nobody else searching for him. So unless we step into that role, there's nobody else that's going to do that. We already found that out by day one. And so I can't get in the fetal position. I have to stand up, whether I want to or not. And I remember we had grief therapy, and the therapist, Danielle, had said to me, she goes, there's all sorts of theories. There's all sorts of alternate realities that you can create from the things that people will tell you or the things that you can imagine. But when you go from that and you don't lean into the facts that he was here and then he wasn't, and all the facts that come with it, then you are creating alternate realities and you are operating from them. So I didn't want to go through and be angry every single day, because it throws what I think Ryan is a gift. He's always been a gift to us. And I thought, I don't want to operate on anger alone. Now, please don't mistake that meaning that I will never be angry.
Oh,
At this point in time, there's no theory attached to it. But make no mistake, if I were to find out that somebody was responsible
oh,
for Ryan's disappearance or covering it up, or, I would burn this world to the ground and everyone in it if I had to, in order to have that justice. And I say that as a mother, and I'm sure everybody will
and like,
recognize it as such, right?
I am there with you, and I don't know him, but being a fellow mom, I would come and help you burn it to the ground.
Right, right. But I don't think it honors Ryan,
Right.
if that's how I go approach every day, because it'll affect and bleed into every interaction that I have, the ones that I have with my spouse, the ones that I have with my daughters, and I just refuse to let that. Ryan's loss has been such a tragedy for us, and it is such a loss, but I will not compound that loss and think of his life being anything less than the gift it was. So until that time, we do that. But I mean, really, for us theories, there's only two theories. Well, two buckets that any theory you can ascribe to. So either someone knows something or no one knows anything. So whatever theory you have rolling around in your mind, and we've thought of, if for every one that one person has
Oh,
thought of, Scott and I have thought of 100. Not
oh, I'm
because we
sure.
think that we're smarter than anybody else.
No.
It's just that you may only think of Ryan every once in a while. We think about him every single day.
Right.
right?
No,
And so that
absolutely.
goes with it. And so it's either someone knows something or no one knows anything. And I couldn't tell you what that is, because no matter what we've done, we've just not heard anything that leads us in one direction or the other. Only one we know is that he was there, he was at a party, and after that he was not seen again.
Yeah, and that's why I said it's so rare. Because when we first started Midday Missing, I used to always say, "It's not like an alien just comes down and beams somebody up. Somebody knows something."
Right.
And then Ryan's case, you can't say that because of the road. It's not like there was cameras in those 14, 18 feet of snow. It's I mean, since, I've talked to you, my brain is like, "This is truly I can't say that I think one way or another." And it would be the first time I would say, nobody could possibly know because
And it's tough because people will sit there and go, "You've been up there for so long." We had searched every single day for 4.5 months, and then we continually go up and do it. And people are like, "Well, you would have found him by now." And I would challenge that and say, if you're not familiar with the terrain and what you're
yeah,
looking for, I don't know what the state of mind was. I don't know how far he traveled or could have traveled,
right.
given that, because he was athletic. He was obviously on um, alcohol, and he had done some MDMA that we were made aware of afterwards. And I say that with no judgment,
No,
because at the end of the day, he was an adult. We wouldn't have condoned MDMA or something like that. But he was an adult. And I look at it and go, ultimately, Ryan paid the final price because he's not
yeah.
here living the life he should be living, whatever that looks like. Whatever it looked like for him. And so there's no judgment for me on that. It's just that is an awareness piece. So how far could he have gone? What was he feeling? What was the effects? What was his state of mind? I don't know any of those things, and I don't know what direction he went. And it's such a difficult terrain to go and look through.
It is. I looked on a map, and as somebody who's done, works in search and rescue, I was like, heavens to Betsy, that terrain. I don't know how. I mean, and it's not like you can say you've covered every inch of it. It looks, to
And
me,
we
treacherous.
and we had tactical come out, I think in, oh, was it 2021 maybe? And so their methods are obviously different than search and rescue. So search and rescue
Mhm.
tends to, when they first get called out, tends to blitz an area and probably does about 50% of it,
Right.
the 100%. So what they're looking for is to be able to call out, to be able to stumble, to be able to find. So they're trying to blitz an entire area
Mhm.
as quickly as they can. After so many years, that technique does not work because you're missing
Right.
what you should be finding. So tactical is very different. They're looking for that needle in the haystack. So they're
Mhm.
on their hands and knees looking. And what was interesting to us within the first, I think, first hour or two, on a path that was at the end of the road, a path that gets walked every single day, whether it's snowmobile in the winter, dog walking, everything. They were there and they found a search and rescue radio that had been dropped 3 years prior. Right. So, and
Wow.
we didn't find it. They didn't find it. Search and rescue didn't find it. Police hadn't found it. Dogs, like, it hadn't been found, but they found it within the first hour of going out and searching. And for every case that you could talk about where someone has been found, and there's just as many that you'll sit there and go, years later, that person was found 100, 200, 300 meters from where the last
Mhm.
destination was known. And it's not, um, through a lack of effort, a lack of experience, dedication or resources. It's just that searching, it's not infallible as any other process.
Especially in a terrain like that, it would be different if it was just a flat,
Yeah.
700 miles of just flat land with, like, 10 trees.
But we've
That
had that.
area is
We had someone go missing in Kamloops and was missing throughout the entire winter, and then they did find that person when the snow melted. And again, within the destination, it was flat prairie ground, no trees, and they
right.
still could not find that person in the winter
Until the
until the
snow
snow melt.
melt.
And it wasn't like that person went missing prior to the snow melting or to the snow coming. They went missing. Maybe some snowfall happened, but not enough, like in a couple of
Right.
days. But I mean, it does go to show you for every case that you hear of, there's tons that you haven't, that they'll be found years later, close to the proximity of where they were last seen.
Yeah. Now, and I just thought of this, how has James handled all of this? Because it just hit me to think how he probably has blamed himself, guilty. How is he? Are
You
y'all
know,
still in
I
contact with
think
him?
that is the casualty of everything, is that we don't have contact with them. And I think it was difficult, because of course you've got people that came on there, and 90% of the people that have joined our Facebook group were incredibly supportive in the first year or so. There was a select few that, of course, they're passionate and engaged, and they turned their attentions to the people that were at the house, the
Mhm.
roommates, James, especially James. And he had been vetted by the police within the first 24 hours. Like, he had left, he had gone home,
Right.
he was where he was supposed to be. Ryan was seen before James left, that sort of thing. So at that point in time, there was, and there still has been nothing to flag James, but yet he received the brunt. And I think
I'm
one
sure.
of the things that struggled with our family, although not necessarily myself, because I'd known James in a different sort of capacity through our work. But, you'll get people that will look, and our family members and our friends, he didn't respond in the way that they felt he should. And I think grief affects people in so many different ways.
Mhm.
And so I don't think that you can judge somebody in those initial moments. I think that James will go throughout his rest of his life dealing with um, the fact that he probably didn't show up in the way that maybe he would have now at almost 20, well, he'd be 28 this year, how he would have shown up now. And
Right.
maybe it'd be the same, maybe it would be different. I'm not exactly sure. But, I think that there's grace. I can give grace to that, because I think that's what Ryan would have wanted. But yeah, I think that it probably is very difficult. I think that some of the friends struggled with, the lack of effort towards maybe searching, or just a perceived sense of selfishness that may
Right.
or may not have been true. I couldn't say.
Well, I mean, and they were so young. I mean, even as an adult, we can't say how and when I hear people say, "Oh, they didn't act the way they were supposed to."
Right.
It's kinda like when you have a child. There's not a rule book of what to do and how to do it.
And I think his family life led him to become the young man that he was at that particular time. And so, you know, I I I don't think that he showed up in the way that he would have wanted to. And that's okay. That not all of us do, but I don't think that diminishes um that he considered Ryan his friend.
Yeah. Now, since it has been years, how do y'all continue to stay connected to Ryan, and how does your family still celebrate him?
Well, we started the Facebook as sort of everybody kept asking, "Have you found him? Have you found him?" So the Facebook started generically or very organically that way, just to remind people and tell them, "No, we haven't. We're still searching. We need volunteers," that sort of thing. And then it morphed into, I wasn't able to search for those first couple of months, so I would create a post and I would tell you
Mhm.
what we were doing, what we were experiencing that day. Um, my memories of Ryan, and then talked about his love of dinosaurs when he was 18 months.
I saw a thing
Right.
about the dinosaurs, and I loved the dinosaurs.
And it's again, like, I wish I could tell you there's a formula that if you do A, B, and C, that you will get the level of engagement, that sort of thing, but there isn't any. And I think you have to be very sincere and very genuine in every interaction that you do. um and so for us, it was, he had a love of dinosaurs. People then made decals from that, and then eventually um we had the whole making these 3D dinosaurs with this beautiful little poem that one of my mins, we call them unicorns because they are these magical creatures that should never have been seen, and yet we see them every single day infused throughout Ryan's group. And they're amazing women that help in everything they can do. And so they created this little tag to talk about being kind so that, wherever you find these dinosaurs and people take them, they scan them. So these dinosaurs have been seen in over 90 countries, scanned over 10,000 times, and they have reached so many different people. And I think that's an incredibly amazing way to honor Ryan. But also it shares a story, which I think is really important. But I think it also challenges you to look in your own community. And while Ryan is not going to necessarily be in some of these places, like, he's been showing up in the Russian Federation. Do we think Ryan's there? No. But perhaps in your community, when you find the dinosaur, you share the story, Ryan's story becomes known, which is wonderful. But then perhaps you'll look around in your community and see, how can I help? Is there another missing person case that doesn't have the same sort of exposure? Or is there a neighbor that needs a certain amount of kindness? Because I think kindness is in such short supply that we could do a little bit more of it.
Absolutely, we could.
Yeah. So we honor Ryan that way. We honor him with our memories. We honor him through, the continuation of his story. Whenever we can share it, we honor him through helping other families that are navigating this sort of loss. I think that we try to. He has this legacy, I think, of love and kindness and he's impacted so many people, whether they knew him or not. And so I think that we are just honor bound to be able to continue on that legacy for him.
Now, what is the name of the foundation again?
It's called the Freebird Project.
The Freebird Project. I thought I was like, it's that we have a burrito place called Freebirds, and I was like, it's the burrito place name, but I wanted to know the exact name. Well, is there anything else you would like to share with us before we say goodbye to everyone?
Well, I think that it would be lovely for people to join, but also one of the things that I did was took those posts that I had written and I wrote a book.
Right.
And the book is called Missing from Me, and it sort of chronicles, and I think what makes it interesting is that it is in real time. So the posts are actually in real time, so you can see what we're going through, how we're expressing it, how it's affecting us, that sort of thing. And I hope that some of the stories that are in there, if you don't have a child that's missing, it still resonates with you. Like don't be a passenger when your kids are growing up, and to be in the pictures and that sort of thing, and to hang on to those moments and the guilt that you have and the regret that you have as parents and that sort of thing. I keep thinking there's so many gifts that Ryan has given me. And one of them is the ability to be able to share his story. So I think that it's more than just sadness. I think it's filled with community, love, and support that maybe not a lot of people have necessarily seen before. And so if you have a chance.
Yes. I will say y'all's community is amazing. I mean, we see stuff like that here on a much smaller scale. It's the first time I've heard a story of so many people going 12 hours away to look for a day.
Yeah. Oh, and at the beginning of it, we've met so many people that continue now to support us, and they never ever met Ryan, and they are so connected to the story. And I think that it just goes to show you, because there is so much disparity in the way people are searched, and across the board, there's no real consistency, and not everybody knows that they need to advocate. I think they trust in a process that isn't quite clearly defined, and it changes depending on where you are from. And it depends on how the person goes missing. And so I think if I could leave everybody with one thing, is that look around. Not everybody has the same sort of network, the same sort of support, but I think everybody deserves to know that everything is being done. Whether you go missing willingly, unwillingly, or unknowingly, there's always somebody left behind that wants to know. And that person that's gone missing should know that every resource is being thrown at them to bring them home. And I think if you have the ability to search or do whatever, so whether it's sharing, whether it's donating it, whether
Mhm.
it's talking about it in your circles, whatever it is, if there's somebody in your area or your community um, that is missing, one of the biggest fears I think that we have as families, there's so many things we can't control.
Right.
Um, and one of them is that is kind of in our control, is to make sure that your child is not forgotten. And
Mhm.
that's a big fear, is that if it's not you, who will carry on and take up the flag for them? And so one of our greatest fears is that has sort of been relieved by the community that we're surrounded with. People will continue to search for Ryan long after we are gone. He will continue to remain in the minds and memories of so many people. If other families could have that reassurance to know that their child will never be forgotten, their loved one, and it does not matter why they go missing, they all deserve to come home.
Could not agree with you more. And as we always ask everyone, please do your part. Share the missing post and flyers that will be on all of our social media. A link to this. Go out, read her book because I wrote it down so I can order a copy. But I just want to ask everyone, please do that. Let's help Heather and everyone keep Ryan's memory alive, and let's share his story. Heather, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing a little bit of Ryan. I almost feel like I know him just from the deep dive I was doing into the Facebook page and stuff. And you guys have truly done a great job. And wherever Ryan is, he knows or should know that you guys have gone above and beyond, and you've done it with class and dignity and kindness, and the world needs more people like you. So thank you for taking time to talk with us, but also thank you for what you're doing for other families, because you're right, he won't be the last one. I wish we could come on a show someday and say, guess what, this is our final episode, no one will ever go missing again. And unfortunately, that's not the case. So thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Yes. Now, I want to say thank you to everyone for joining me today. We will see you again on Wednesday for the next episode of Midday Missing. And if you follow True Crime and Wine Time, we air every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central. This week, JT is back from his cruise, and we are covering the Axeman murders in New Orleans. And guys, as somebody who loves New Orleans, I'm going to tell you this case is frightening. Okay. So you want to join us. Also, True Crime and Wine Time has our first live show for 2025 on May 3rd at Hamilton Pool Vineyard and Farms in Dripping Springs, Texas. We are going to be covering the Austin, Texas yogurt shop murders. If you live in the area, you want to come out, hang out with JT and I as we do the show live, we would love to see you. Also, remember, you can join us on our Facebook pages. We are also on Instagram, TikTok, that thing called Twitter now, it's called something else. You can find us there. And remember, you can find all of our shows right here on YouTube. And as always, guys, until next time, I want you to please stay safe, stay aware, and let's help bring the missing home. Bye, guys. Until Wednesday, stay safe.